friends! I'm making a reading wrap-up every Monday until I am all caught up. Today, let's talk about the books I read in August. August was a weird month for me. I was driving my youngest brother to and from football practices and reading in the car whenever I arrived early. I felt lucky to have my mom back from the hospital until she went back to the hospital for a few days at the end of August, and it was a weird and hard month where I really tried to focus on my family. That being said, I still read 13 books. An unlucky number of books. A baker's dozen of books. Let's get started by talking about the children's literature I read. In August, I was lucky enough to read 3 absolutely delightful middle grade books. Let's begin with an adorable piece of historical fiction, Until Tomorrow, Mr. Marsworth, by Sheila O'Connor. This novel is set during the Vietnam War and is about an 11-year-old girl who is trying to save her big brother from the draft. She takes up a paper route in order to save up money to send him to college so he won't need to fight in the war. On her first day of the paper route, she introduces herself to all of her clients, except one. When he doesn't answer his door, she decides to leave a letter to the town recluse. The pair become pen pals and develop a friendship, and this old man, a pacifist, starts to help her find a way to save her older brother. It's a story about how people are willing to do anything for the people they love. I think this book also serves as a good introduction to the concept of war, of military drafts, and to the concept of choosing peace not just as a country, but in your everyday life. I think it's a good book and helped me understand this period of history better as an adult. I'm giving Until Tomorrow, Mr. Marsworth by Sheila O'Connor 4 stars. Next, we have a contemporary middle grade. I read Amina's Voice by Hannah Khan. This story is about Amina, a Pakistani-American Muslim middle schooler. She's going through a lot of big changes. It's her first year of middle school and everything feels different. Even her best friend Sujin is changing. She suddenly wants to spend time hanging out with a popular girl named Emily and is thinking about changing her name to something more American. Sujin is also encouraging Amina to try out for a solo in her school's choir. Amina loves music, but not the spotlight. And that rings even more true as she re-examines her relationship with music when her uncle visits from Pakistan and is critical of Muslims practicing music. Everything gets compounded when her local mosque gets vandalized, and she keeps asking herself if she needs to change to fit in, or if she can belong to this community while still being true to herself and her culture, and if she fits in her culture while being herself. It's a pretty nice story about a community coming together to protect each other, and I think it's a useful tool for helping kids understand how to recover from hate crimes, or how to respond when people in your community are attacked. I think it's useful and brings along a message of unity and hope while being honest to kids about what they can really do to help in situations like this, and like ones they've likely been hearing about for the past few years. I'm giving Amina's Voice by Hannah Khan 4 stars. The last middle grade book I read was a science fiction book, Sal and Gabby Fix the Universe by Carlos Hernandez. This is a sequel to Sal and Gabby Break the Universe, which I've talked about a few times before in previous videos. So here's the deal. Sal Bidone is a middle school magician who secretly has the power to create wormholes, and his Poppy, a calamity physicist, is trying to close all of the wormholes that Sal creates because he thinks they are slowly destroying the universe. Unfortunately, Sal's best friend Gabby, or a version of Gabby from another universe, visits trying to rip more holes in the universe, trying to destroy the barrier between universes altogether. Because in her universe, Sal's Poppy was successful and it destroyed her world. Sal has to figure out who is right, his father or a version of his best friend. While we're balancing these high-stakes problems, Sal and Gabby also have to fix their middle school production of Alice in Wonderland, help advanced artificial intelligence become self-actualized, and find their missing friend who has run away from home. It's kind of a stressful week for these kids, honestly. I found Sal and Gabby Fix the Universe to be a hilarious and fun adventure. It features representations of Cuban culture, diabetic and chronic illness discussions, and a chosen family that I think kids will love. I don't think the scenes and timeline in this book flowed as well as the first book, but overall I think it was a fun science fiction that could encourage children to get interested in STEAM topics and show that they can pursue their dreams and change the world. I'm giving Sal and Gabby Fix the Universe by Carlos Hernandez 4 stars. Moving on, I was lucky enough to read 3 fantastic young adult fiction books. I think contemporary young adult fiction is doing some of the most interesting things. I can see not just how this genre is moving forward and evolving over the past decade or so, but pushing other genres to move forward to include more diverse voices and treat their readers with more respect. I was lucky enough to pick up Bookish and the Beast by Ashley Post, and this is the 3rd book in the Once Upon a Con series. Previous titles include Geekerella and The Princess and the Fangirl. Bookish and the Beast is a modern retelling of Beauty and the Beast. Our heroine is Rosie Thorne, who is a broke bookworm. Worried about getting into and paying for college, she is grieving her recently deceased mother, and the collection of the Starfield novels, the book she read with her mother that they had to sell to a collector to pay off medical bills. Our beast is Vance Raines, who plays a general's son in the Starfield movies, and was sent away to escape the paparazzi after the latest scandal. Unfortunately, when these two meet, it's not sparks that fly, but an incredibly rare book that flies right into a pool and is damaged. Rosie finds herself working for the household Vance is trapped in, organizing the extensive science fiction library. And as the two spend more time trapped together, they slowly begin to let each other in. I loved Beauty and the Beast growing up, and I also love the idea of novelizations that expand the universe of defunct worlds of pop culture. I found this retelling to have every bit of charm and wholesome lightheartedness that one would expect from a fairy tale. Although I must admit that if you're not someone who absolutely loves pop culture, this probably isn't the book for you. This world is filled with fans who enthusiastically love a franchise that was created with nods to several science fiction universes. And I'm sure it can be a bit overwhelming or even annoying to have these constant references brought into the story. It's a book about fandom written for people who participate in fandom. And that's always what I loved about this series, but it's definitely not for everyone. I am giving Bookish and the Beast by Ashley Poston 4 stars. A few different people recommended Cool for the Summer by Dahlia Adler to me. This is a bisexual retelling of Grease. I don't really like the movie musical Grease, but I do feel like this book fixed a lot of the problems I had with it. Most notably, having the story told from the point of view of a bisexual girl really decreased the overall levels of misogyny from the very dated story of Grease. When you really boil it down, this book is about a girl, Laura, who is finally getting everything she wanted, her high school crush, Chase, to pay attention to her. Laura and her friends are trying to make their senior year perfect, and Laura feels like she has everything on paper. A close group of friends, a cool job, and the boy of her dreams, but really all she can think about is the romantic summer she spent with Jasmine, a girl, who without boarding transferred to her high school. I think what it was particularly special about this book is the way we get to see someone questioning themselves and explore their sexual and romantic identity. A lot of the time in queer books, we get to see people who already have it all figured out, but that's not always the case for everyone, and it was refreshing to explore this complexity. This book also uses a dual timeline, which isn't exactly my cup of tea, but seeing the school year progress alongside the summer was a good way to give insight into the intimacy of Laura's relationships, and not just her romantic ones. Because what this novel does wonderfully is balance the romance with the friendships that have shaped our protagonists. I liked this book, but if you're thinking of getting it, I might suggest waiting to read it until the summer, because I absolutely think this book is meant to be a summer read. I'm giving Cool for the Summer by Dahlia Adler 4 stars. The last young adult fiction book I read was The Passing Playbook by Isaac Fitzsimons. This book is about Spencer, an awesome big brother and soccer player. He's also trans, and after a year of bullying at his old school culminated in some pretty serious threats against him, his parents were able to get him a fresh start at a fairly liberal private school in their area of Ohio. He likes his new school. His classmates are more accepting of LGBTQ+ teens, he has a good chance of being a starter on the boys' soccer team, and he is starting to make good friends. But nobody at his new school knows he is trans, which complicates things when a discriminatory law forces Spencer's soccer coach to bench him because his birth certificate has an F for female on it. Spencer needs to choose to cheer everyone on from the sidelines or risk it all by fighting for his right to play, even if it means coming out to everyone, including the boy from a very conservative evangelical family that he has a crush on. I think this is a timely book given the slate of new laws that have passed or been proposed in several states across the country in 2021, seeking to ban trans kids from sports and from fully participating in their communities. I'm hopeful that this book can build empathy, can help trans athletes feel seen, and know that there are adults who are fighting for them. And most importantly, I hope that reading this book helps move people into taking action to protect trans kids. As someone who spent several years being forced to play soccer and who hated every second of it, I loved this book. I thought it balanced the struggle of trying to grow up and make a name for yourself and to assert your independence really well with the fact that teenagers are still children who need supportive communities. I am giving The Passing Playbook by Isaac Fitzsimons 4 stars. I had the chance to read one adult science fiction book in August. I read Axiom's End by Lindsay Ellis shortly after my spouse read the book. I don't often read science fiction, so if this is a genre you really love, please take it with a grain of salt when I say, this book was weird. This is a first contact story set in 2007, right when so much of what we think of as the internet nowadays was really just beginning. This book follows Cora, who knows that news of the first contact has been leaked, because it was leaked by her estranged father who had fled the country a few years ago before becoming a whistleblower. Cora finds out that her family is more involved with the extraterrestrial presence on Earth than she initially believed, and is chosen by one of the aliens to become an interpreter for him. This book has been compared to Hank Green's Carl's series, but honestly, other than it centering one young woman who is the sole point of contact for an entire alien species, I don't feel like they shared a lot of similarities. Axiom's End leaned into the suspense and action. It felt dangerous the whole way through in a way that an absolutely remarkable thing just didn't. This book was fast-paced and at times felt overwritten, and honestly, I found the characters to be unrelatable throughout the story, with none of their choices ever feeling logical or even emotionally resonant with me. Overall, though, I thought this was an okay science fiction book that took on the challenging task of also being historical fiction. I am giving Axiom's End by Lindsay Ellis 3 stars. I've continued my voyages into the genre of fantasy, and I am finding this genre more and more enticing the further I go, which could be dangerous. Fantasy books are known for being quite long. Let's start with a fantasy comic. I read The Girl from the Sea by Molly Knox Ostertag. I am a big fan of Molly Knox Ostertag's previous works, so I was very excited to hear that she was releasing a standalone graphic novel. This is a sapphic story about a girl, Morgan, who lives on an island and who falls in love with a Selkie named Keltie. For those unfamiliar with Selkies, this girl is a shape-shifting water spirit. She is usually a seal, but every 7 years she can appear as a human if she so chooses. And Keltie was charged with keeping her family safe from an encroaching touristy miniature cruise, which is planning a route near their home. This tourist trap is run by Morgan's best friend's parents, and Morgan has been growing more and more distant from her friends and more isolated in general in the wake of her parents' divorce and the realization that she is gay. This is a sweet love story wrapped around in a tale of environmental activism and the need to be your truest and fullest self. I appreciated getting to learn more about a mythological creature I did not know a lot about. Also, the character design is fantastic, and every panel is unbelievably expressive and gives us so many ways to understand who these characters are and who they project themselves to be to the people around them. I am giving The Girl from the Sea by Molly Knox Ostertag 4 stars. Next, I continued reading The Cosmere as the co-host of the Cosmere Crabathon. In August, I read one novel and one novella for this readathon. I read The Bands of Mourning by Brandon Sanderson, and this is the most recently published book from Mistborn Era 2, which follows Waxillian Ladrian, who feels like the world of heroes has ended with skyscrapers, railroads, and electric lights. Who even needs magical powers anymore? But when he is recruited by some immortal shapeshifters to help locate a missing member of their community and also possibly find the mythical metal mines of the deceased Lord Ruler, which would grant someone all of the magical powers available in this universe, Wax is willing to take on the case. I think what really shone through in this book, though, is the complexity of the female characters, particularly Wax's fiancée Steris, who is organized and possibly has OCD or autism. Not that I want to diagnose fictional characters, but I do believe that is what the author was going for. Oftentimes in fantasy books, I've noticed female characters fall flat, or characters just fall completely into archetypes that you could substitute one character for someone else from a different book. Nobody in The Bands of Mourning feels like that. It feels like every character is on their own journey and they just happen to care about each other enough to help each other along and grow together. I'm giving The Bands of Mourning by Brandon Sanderson 4 stars. Now that I have read all of the published Mistborn novels, I was told I could read Mistborn Secret History by Brandon Sanderson, which takes place during the third Mistborn Era 1 book, The Hero of Ages. This novella follows the journey of a beloved but sadly absent character in the third book, and we get to see what adventures they get up to as the world was ending. I am afraid I cannot reveal more because of spoilers, but it was filled with fast-paced vignettes, and I think people who have read the main series will enjoy this. I am giving Mistborn Secret History by Brandon Sanderson 3 stars. I also read one piece of classic literature. What makes something a classic, you might ask? But honestly, that is a difficult question to answer. A classic book is generally older and has withstood the test of time. Maybe because it reveals universal truths or allows you to understand different historical periods. But generally what makes something a classic book is a lot of people agreeing that it is one. Anyways, I read The Blue Castle by L.M. Montgomery. You might recognize L.M. Montgomery's name from her other works of Canadian literature, Anne of Green Gables or Emily of New Moon. This is one of her standalone books, though, and follows Valency Sterling, who is considered to be an old maid, even though she's actually only a couple of years older than me. She's unmarried and has never been in love before, and is living with family members who are essentially helicopter parenting her life even though she is a full-grown adult. Her only escape is books about nature and daydreams of the Blue Castle, a place where she can be exactly who she wants to be. When she gets the news that she is going to die soon, she decides to break free from her family and their meddling and finally start living life for herself. This is a hilarious book. Truly, comedy peaked when Lucy Maud Montgomery was writing books, and the entire world is worse off without her. This book also aged marvelously because even though you need some historical context every now and again, for example, why someone my age would be considered an old maid, it remains hilarious and insightful work. I'm giving The Blue Castle by Ellen Montgomery 4 stars. Finally, for our last genre, I read 2 nonfiction books in August. I think the nonfiction books I read this month really enhanced the fiction books I was reading, as they allowed me to connect the stories I loved to real problems and real people. First, I read Disfigured on Fairy Tales, Disability, and Making Space by Amanda Liddick. This gives us a look into how disabled people have been treated in fairy tales and how fairy tales have shaped our cultural expectations around disability. I think this book has come at exactly the right time, as fairy tale retellings have become more and more popular over the last few years, at the same time that disability justice and disabled activists have become more and more visible thanks to the internet. I think this book could serve as a good entry point for those wanting to become involved in the fight for disability justice and examine the ways ableism has played out in their own lives and what narratives they might need to re-examine now. I think this book includes a good primer on the current state of the disability rights movement and is an invitation to examine your life and the world around you more. I am giving Disfigured on Fairy Tales, Disability, and Making Space by Amanda Liddick 5 stars. Finally, the very last book I read in August, White Fragility, Why It's So Hard for White People to Talk About Racism by Robin DiAngelo. This book is written by a white woman for white people who want to examine their own white fragility and be better allies and accomplices to people of color and build an anti-racist world. As an Asian person, this book was not directed at or written for me. That being said, I still found moments in this book helpful as I seek to unlearn racist ideas and assumptions that I have grown up with. I most likely would not recommend this book to other people of color. A lot of it details experiences of racism that a lot of us already have lived experience with, and it can be rudimentary for us. This book also focuses on microaggressions and is built an antidote from Robin DiAngelo's presumably a middle-class life, and often focuses on microaggressions that happen in the professional world of people interacting in offices, as she was a diversity consultant for corporations. I think that's part of the reason this book is so lacking. It pushes white people to do soul-searching, to confront beliefs they have, and examine if they are being the kind of person that they want to be, but it never calls them to action or invites them to work towards societal change for solutions. It acknowledges that systemic racism exists, but still only focuses on the individual. It's lacking. It's perhaps an introduction, and I would not discourage anyone from picking it up, but I certainly wouldn't want anyone to stop their anti-racism education here. I'm giving White Fragility, Why It's So Hard for White People to Talk About Racism by Robin DiAngelo 3 stars. Those are all 13 books I read in August of 2021. I look forward to finally catching up on my reading wrap-ups in the new year. For now, tell me down in the comments, what are you looking forward to next year? And if you want to see more from me, please subscribe, watch another video of mine, or support me on Patreon. And hey, I love you!